A partnership. Top right is instant messaging, that is sending a message just from one person to another. Bottom left is trade behaviors, and the bottom right is mailing behaviors. You don't have to be a social network expert to see that these different graphs have different patterns. They imply that relationships based on these different activities generate different kinds of social networks. I'm not going to get into it much more depth than that, just to let you know that because that's true, using social networks lets us say something about the kinds of relationships that they take part in, and lets us make predictions. Well, we think that the way that people trade together will look differently than the way that people talk together, for example. Next slide. They're also really cool looking, I think. The test of homophily is the extent to which people look like each other. Don't sweat this big graph up here. I'm just going to highlight a finding on it. Click advance just once, Jimmy. This highlight here shows that folks with similar age and experience are more likely to engage in interaction. That is to say, people who've been playing for just as long as each other or roughly around the same age, they're more likely to partner with each other while they play the game. So that backs up the homophily hypothesis. Advance one more time. However, there is not a strong gender homophily effect. Folks who are male are not more likely to play with males than females. In fact, when we look at the female behaviors, it's really that the women don't want to play with other women. There's a very strong negative homophily approach for the women. The women want to play with the men, and the men want to play with the men a little bit as well. It kind of backs up that good for the goose, good for the gander interaction effect I showed you a little while ago, that the women are really there and interested in cross-gender interaction. Next slide. Now we look at geographic proximity. Since we know where they are, we had a hypothesis, which is that people who are close to each other are probably going to be more likely to play with each other than people far away. That is, if that's the case, it's not that you're going and playing with random strangers. You're probably playing with a lot of people you already know, which is something we've seen in prior research, especially when we interview and talk to people. And in fact, that is what we find here. People who are 10 kilometers away versus 100 kilometers away, the likelihood of playing with the person closest is 5 times as great as the person who is farther away. So there is a strong geographic proximity approach. We aren't all playing just with randoms. It's not just that, to get back to an old Thoreau quote, it's not just that people in Maine and Texas are going to talk to each other or not because of what they do or don't have to say to each other. It's much more likely that people in Maine are going to play with people in Maine because they already knew some people in Maine and that's what they wanted to go play with. Advance it one more. This is a dummy of a potential future kind of visualization tool. I've been just learning a lot about the visualizations working with Nosh and the computer scientist, Professor Contractor, to see that visualizations are a really interesting way of representing some material, and as opposed to looking at coefficients in a regression or a structural equation model, you can really see some interesting things just the way your brain works by looking at patterns on a map. This particular graph doesn't show you much. This is just people who are playing one day a random slice. But what it does show you is that we have intensity maps, and we can look at how intensely people are clustered. And the question is then, well, what kinds of behaviors or what kind of people might we want to look at for geographic clustering? One that's of particular interest to Sony and of some interest to us is a behavior that's known as gold farming, which is a banned illegal behavior in the game worlds where some people will collect resources to then sell them for real-world dollars to other players who don't want to do that collection. And there are a lot of theories about where these gold farmers are and what they do, and there's a pretty strong interest in the industry about how to catch them and prevent the behavior. Now, social networking actually lets us look at the behavioral signatures of people who are doing that behavior. So we could say, look, the people who got banned for being farmers for doing this illegal activity, they look like this. And they have network graphs that look like this, and behavioral patterns that look like this, which allows us to then make predictions. Because if you're Sony, if you want to look for them, you want to be efficient about how and where you look, and you want to look at these patterns. There is also some interest about where these people are. There are a lot of people who think that a lot of them are concentrated in China and Eastern Europe, for places where the wage market is such that it would support this kind of economic activity. So if we found a map like this where we generated an intensity map, and we found, there was a giant cluster in Hong Kong or something, well, that would suggest something about where these people are and, potential enforcement mechanisms. This one here just shows people playing on a given day. These are people not up to no good. But there's playing on a North American server, and you can see what's kind of interesting. There are a few people playing in England, there are people playing in Australia, playing along with folks in North America, even though they have their own regional zone servers. Next slide, and this is the Google link. If you wouldn't mind clicking that.
All right, I'll let you know when the map comes up here, hopefully.
Okay. Maybe.
All right, it's come up all right. No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it has. We're all right.
So I'm going to have Jimmy move over to Europe.
I think I'm going to have to cut and paste it. It'll just be a second.
No problem. It looked like it was working for a minute. Is the map empty? Is that the problem?
Yeah, it's giving me the map, but it's saying the file's not found. I'm not sure why, because it worked before.
You know what? We had this problem from time to time. If it doesn't pull up, it's not that big a deal. All the map would show, I think Google Maps are cool looking, and they're a nice way of visualizing material. You guys have seen these before. They, like it has that approach where little push pins kind of drop down. You can see clusters of people. We looked at a sample of people who had been banned for farming behavior, and we found clusters in Europe, in Germany, and in Belgium and England. And that's where their ISPs were. What we're able to do is, using some third-party software, we can take a look at the ISP, and we can actually get latitude and longitude, which we can then import into a Google map and plot onto a pinpoint plot like this, and kind of see clusters like that. So it's just a different way of visualizing than that intensity map of the whole planet, to look at where individuals are. And instead of looking at like, well, we've got, a lot of people in Romania, we could say, well, we've actually got, 15 people in this city, and there we go. So you can zoom in there, and you can feel like Big Brother and creeped out for a minute here too. So as you zoom in, you can see that you can really track people. So this is where the banned farmers were, or at least their ISPs were, and we haven't figured out whether or not how we can test whether they're using proxy servers or not yet. Got a couple ideas about that. Anyway, you don't have to sweat this too much. That's actually where I'm going to stop the presentation and stop talking and throw this open to Q&A. But I just want to leave you guys an idea of some of the visualizations we have out there that we're working on.
Now, we've still got the room for a little while for questions and answers, but in case some of you were planning on leaving at 1:30, since it's about that, before we do the Q&A, I want to give everybody a chance to thank Dr. Williams for coming real quickly. And he wasn't able to hear you laughing and things at the jokes, but you were, and now you can go ahead and give him a quick hand before we go into Q&A. Thanks, of course, to all of you for taking time to come to this. The only regret is, we wish we could get Dr. Williams on the campus so you can see how nice it is, especially today. We've got a Southern California day, but we'll do that some other time. For now, we'll just go ahead and have Q&A, and of course, we'll only have about 10 minutes, so if you've got a big question, I'll go ahead and put his website up so you can look him up. If you've got the kind of thing we can talk about now, just make sure you use the microphones, and thanks again.